In 1075, a Vietnamese general did something unthinkable. He launched a preemptive strike deep into Chinese territory, sacking major cities of the mighty Song Dynasty. This wasn't just a raid, it was a declaration. The general was Ly Thuong Kiet, and his audacious act was about to unleash the full fury of an empire upon his homeland, Dai Viet. This is the story of how a small kingdom, faced with an invasion of 100,000 soldiers, chose not to run, but to fight on the banks of a single fateful river. The Song Dynasty was humiliated. Their emperor, seething with rage, assembled a colossal invasion force. 100,000 men, including 10,000 elite cavalry and a seemingly endless sea of infantry, marched south under the command of General Quoc. Their mission was simple: crush Dai Viet and erase the stain of their dishonor. From the imperial court in Kaifeng to the smallest villages in the south, the message was clear: the southern barbarians would be taught a lesson. The ground trembled as this river of steel began to flow, and for the people of Dai Viet, it seemed like the end of their world was marching towards them. As the Song army poured across the border, panic spread, villages emptied, and tales of the invaders' might traveled faster than the army itself. Outnumbered and outmatched, any sane commander would have fallen back, trading land for time. But Ly Thuong Kiet was no ordinary commander. He looked at the map, not for a place to retreat, but for a place to make a stand. His eyes fell upon the Nhu Nguyet River, known today as the Cow River in Bac Ninh province. It was here, against impossible odds, that he would draw his line in the sand, or rather, in the water. This river would become his fortress, his weapon, and the stage for one of history's greatest underdog victories. What made the Nhu Nguyet River so special? To the invading Song army, it was just another obstacle to cross. To Ly Thuong Kiet, it was a strategic masterpiece waiting to be composed. He saw its treacherous currents, its uneven, muddy banks, and its dense surrounding forests not as challenges, but as allies. He immediately set his men to work, transforming the natural landscape into a deadly, multi-layered defense. Along the southern bank, they erected a massive earthen wall, reinforced with a dense palisade of sharpened bamboo stakes. This defensive line stretched for miles, a formidable barrier against any ground assault. But Ly's genius lay in what he did to the river itself. He ordered his soldiers to plant thousands of sharp iron-tipped stakes just beneath the water's surface, hidden from view. These underwater traps were designed to tear through the hulls of the Song's assault boats, turning the river into a death zone. In the forests lining the banks, he concealed his archers and small mobile units of troops. His plan was not to meet the Song head-on, but to bleed them, to frustrate them, and to use their own overwhelming numbers against them. The river was no longer just a body of water, it was an extension of his will, a carefully crafted killing field. Now, imagine being a soldier in the Dai Viet army. You're likely a farmer, conscripted to fight, armed with little more than a spear and your courage. You hear the thunderous drums of the approaching Song army, a sound that promises your annihilation. You see their vast banners stretching across the horizon. Fear is a natural, suffocating force. Ly Thuong Kiet knew that winning this battle required more than just stakes and ramparts. He had to forge an unbreakable spirit in the hearts of his men. He needed to turn their fear into righteous fury. And so, one quiet night, as the men huddled in their defenses, a voice echoed from a temple near the riverbank. It was clear, powerful, and seemed to come from the gods themselves. It recited a short, electrifying poem. Over the southern mountains and rivers, the southern emperor reigns. This was decreed and written down in the book of heaven. How dare you invaders come to trespass? You will surely be annihilated and defeated. Whether this was a divine omen or a clever psychological trick orchestrated by Ly himself, it didn't matter. The effect was immediate and profound. The poem spread like wildfire through the ranks. It transformed the soldiers from terrified farmers into divine guardians of their homeland. The river was no longer just a defensive line. It was a sacred boundary, and they were its chosen protectors. When General Quoc arrived at the Nhu Nguyet, he saw the fortified bank and scoffed. With his massive army, he believed he could simply overwhelm the defenders. He launched his first assault. Thousands of Song soldiers piled into boats and rafts, charging across the water with war cries. But as they approached the southern bank, chaos erupted. A storm of arrows rained down from unseen archers hidden in the trees. The boats suddenly lurched and broke apart, impaled on the hidden stakes below. Men plunged into the water, dragged down by their armor or picked off by arrows. The river ran red. Undeterred, Quoc tried again and again. He sent his men to build makeshift bridges, but Dai Viet fire ships, small rafts set ablaze and sent downstream, sailed into them, turning his engineering efforts to ash. He attempted surprise night raids, only to find the defenders vigilant and waiting, the mysterious poem echoing in their minds. Each assault met the same fate. The Song army, so confident just weeks before, was now stuck. The river became a graveyard for their soldiers, and their momentum, once unstoppable, was completely broken against Ly Thuong Kiet's unyielding wall of wood, water, and will. With his direct assaults failing, Quoc changed tactics. If he couldn't break the line, he would starve it. He set up a sprawling camp on the northern bank, effectively laying siege to Ly's army. His engineers worked tirelessly, building siege towers to fire down on the defenders and attempting to construct more robust pontoon bridges. But every time they made progress, a daring night raid from Ly's forces would sabotage their work. The Song soldiers were now trapped in a stalemate, but their situation was far worse than that of the defenders. The tropical climate they were unaccustomed to began to take its toll. The swampy ground of their camp became a breeding ground for malaria and dysentery. Food supplies dwindled. The vast army was a hungry beast, and its supply lines were long and vulnerable. Disease swept through the ranks, claiming more soldiers than the fighting had. The Song troops were homesick, sick, and starving, staring across a river at an enemy who refused to break. Meanwhile, on the southern bank, the Dai Viet soldiers, though also running low on supplies, were sustained by something more powerful than food. They chanted Ly's poem. It was their mantra, their promise of victory. While the Song army rotted from within, the spirit of the defenders burned brighter than ever. After nearly 3 long months, the Song army was a shadow of its former self. Quoc's force was crippled by starvation and sickness. The soldiers were demoralized, and discipline was collapsing. Ly Thuong Kiet, watching from across the river, knew the moment had come. The hunter was about to become the hunted. He had spent months observing the enemy, mapping their weaknesses, and waiting for this precise moment of vulnerability. He gathered his healthiest troops. The time for defense was over. It was time to attack. Under the cover of darkness, Ly launched his masterstroke. Small elite units crossed the river at secret fords they had prepared, bypassing the main Song camp to strike at their flanks and rear. Simultaneously, his warboats, which had been hidden in tributaries, surged into the main channel, their crews letting out ferocious war cries. They smashed into the Song's remaining fleet and landed troops directly in the heart of the enemy's encampment. The exhausted, sick Song soldiers were woken by screams and the sight of their tents in flames. Panic ripped through the camp. There was no order, no strategy, just chaos. The organized imperial army dissolved into a terrified mob. By dawn, the battle was over. The mighty Song invasion force was broken, fleeing in disarray back towards the north, relentlessly pursued by Ly's forces. The victory at the Nhu Nguyet River was absolute. It secured Dai Viet's sovereignty and sent a shockwave through the Song Empire. While a truce was eventually negotiated, the message was clear. Dai Viet was not a nation to be trifled with. The battle became a cornerstone of Vietnamese identity, a legendary symbol of defiance against overwhelming power. And the poem, Nam Quoc Son Ha, became the nation's first declaration of independence, its words echoing through centuries of struggle, reminding a people of their inherent right to rule their own land. The legacy of Nhu Nguyet is a powerful lesson, that victory is not always won by the biggest army or the sharpest sword, but by strategy, spirit, and the unbreakable will of a people determined to be free. Thanks for journeying back in time with us. If you enjoyed this story of incredible courage and strategy, make sure to hit that subscribe button and support us at 3 Histories. We'll see you next time.